Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're venturing into a pretty fascinating area, how people who are blind or have low vision, let's call them BLV, how they actually interact with audio-based navigation apps.
Yeah, great topic.
We've got this really insightful study that, looked into what makes them keep using these tools, but also what might make them stop.
Right.
So our goal here is to pull out the key insights and figure out what they tell us about making these honestly vital tools even better.
Absolutely. And the main source for this discussion is a research paper. It's titled Characterizing and Predicting Engagement of Blind and Low Vision People with an Audio-Based Navigation App.
Okay.
And this paper, it's based on how over 4,700 BLV individuals used Microsoft's Soundscape app. Now, Soundscape is, well, it's quite innovative. It uses 3D audio cues. The idea is to create a sort of mental picture of what's around you, giving an auditory map instead of just, turn by turn.
Like hearing a shop announced in your right ear as you pass it, that kind of thing.
Exactly that kind of thing, helping build that spatial awareness.
Yeah, exactly. And for you listening, whether you're into tech, accessibility, or just how people, engage with the world, this deep dive offers a really unique angle on tech empowerment.
For sure.
It shows what makes users truly engage with an app in a meaningful way and reveals some, well, surprising things about which features really matter for the long haul. We're going to unpack the data, get to the core of what resonates. So what's the story here? How are BLV individuals connecting with these tools?
Well, first off, I think it's important to appreciate the real difficulties BLV individuals can face with standard navigation.
Right.
Relying heavily on memory or tactile cues or needing sighted help, it presents challenges. Audio-based apps, they aim to kind of overcome these hurdles by layering sound information onto the real world.
So they help build that mental map.
Precisely. Through sounds for points of interest, shops, bus stops, landmarks, directions, all that.
And Soundscape, the app in this study, it really does take a different approach, like we said, not just the next turn. It uses that sophisticated 3D spatial audio to give real-time info about what's actually around you. So you might hear an intersection described, and the sound feels like it's coming from that direction.
Yeah, it's quite immersive.
And users can set these things called audio beacons to their destination, like a sound guide.
That's right. A continuous sound guiding you. And you could even virtually explore places before you go. Preview the route.
It's all about creating a richer, more intuitive sense of space through sound.
Exactly. And the researchers, they had a very rich data set to work with. They looked at activity logs from, I think it was over 15,000 Soundscape users initially.
Wow.
But for this specific study, they really honed in on the first week of app use for nearly 4,700 people identified as blind or low vision.
Okay, the first week. Why that time frame?
Well, the central question was, could they predict if a user would stick with the app after that initial week and then also within the first month, that first impression period?
Accept.
And to do this, they used machine learning models, specifically something called adaptive boosting, or AdaBoost.
AdaBoost. Okay, what's that in simple terms?
Think of it as a smart way for the computer to find subtle patterns in how people use the app. It combines lots of sort of weak clues to build a really strong prediction about who's likely to stay engaged.
Okay, so it's finding those early signals of long-term interest. Got it. So let's unpack this. What were some of maybe the most striking findings? What patterns jumped out?
Well, one of the clearest things was simply how much someone used the app during that critical first week.
Just sheer volume of use.
Yeah, the total time spent using it, and also how consistently, like how many days they opened it, the time between their very first use and their last use within that week. Those are really strong indicators of whether they'd stick around long term.
Okay, that makes intuitive sense. That initial investment, maybe.
It seems that way. That early engagement seems to set the expectation for, the ongoing value.
Right. If you find it useful right off the bat, you're probably more likely to keep using it. But what within the app? What specific features made the biggest difference?
That's where it gets really interesting. Engagement with the spatial audio callouts.
Those environmental descriptions. The building on your right type thing.
Exactly those. The study found that users who kept using the app engaged with significantly more of these callouts in their first week compared to users who dropped off.
Okay, so it wasn't just about navigation prompts, but about understanding the surroundings.
Precisely. It strongly suggests these users weren't just, trying to get somewhere specific. They were actively using the app to build a mental map, to explore, and the app was facilitating that curiosity. Those spatial descriptions really seem to hook them.
Building on that, the study also looked at the types of audio cues, didn't it? Did it matter which kind of spatial call-out they were hearing?
Yes, absolutely. They broke them down. There were long road callouts happening as you move, beacon callouts, which are specifically for a route you've set, and then these automatic callouts, the ones that just happen as you explore without you actively pressing buttons.
Okay.
And what's fascinating is that those automatic callouts, particularly at points of interest and intersections, were much more common among the users who stuck with the app.
So the app just kind of spontaneously telling you things about the environment as you moved. That was a big draw.
It really seems so.
Yeah.
It hints that the app's ability to support that kind of spontaneous exploration, not just directed A to B navigation, was really important for retention.
So it's fostering that understanding of the space between the start and end points. That's a really neat distinction. What else came up about how people used it?
Well, beyond interacting directly with the audio, there was another intriguing finding about background app usage.
Running it in the background, how so?
Users who continued with Soundscape actually spent a higher percentage of their total usage time with the app running in the background.
Huh. What does that suggest?
The implication is they weren't just opening it for active route planning or specific tasks. They were using it for a kind of continuous ambient awareness, almost like having an extra sense constantly feeding them info about their surroundings while they were on the move.
That's a really subtle but powerful idea. Using it almost like a constant sensory feed, not just a tool you pull out when you're lost.
Exactly. It shifts the perspective, doesn't it?
It really does.
And another feature that topped up as important was the street preview.
Ah, the virtual exploration.
Right, letting users explore locations virtually through audio before they physically go there. The study found that people who use the ahead of me, around me, and nearby markers buttons in that preview mode, they were significantly more likely to be retained.
So that ability to kind of scope things out beforehand, build confidence maybe?
That seems to be the takeaway. Familiarizing yourself with the environment virtually encourages real-world use later.
Okay, so strong early engagement, those immersive spatial callouts for exploration, background use for ambient awareness, and the virtual preview. Those are all positive signs. Now, was there anything that, well, surprised you? Something you might have expected to be important, but wasn't?
Yes, actually. A rather surprising finding, I thought, was about the in-app tutorials.
The tutorials, what about them?
Well, the data showed that engaging with the tutorials was not a strong predictor of long-term use.
Really? That seems counterintuitive. You'd think learning how to use it would be key.
I know, right? It's unexpected. Why might that be? Well, one possibility is users just prefer, learning by doing, diving straight in.
Hands-on exploration instead of reading instructions.
Could be. Or perhaps the tutorials themselves had, usability issues. Maybe they weren't easy to find or follow.
Or maybe too abstract, like the concepts only clicked when they actually did it in the real world.
That's definitely possible, too. It's something for developers to think about, for sure. How effective are these tutorials, really?
Yeah, fascinating. It suggests real-world application might just trump structured learning in this specific context.
Another really significant factor tied into retention was the audio output, how they were listening.
You mean like headphones versus the phone speaker?
Exactly. The study found that device settings, specifically using Bluetooth or headphones, were strong predictors of sticking with the app.
Because that's how you get the full 3D spatial audio experience, right?
Precisely. If you're just using the phone's built-in speaker, you lose that crucial directionality, that sense of space. It really seems experiencing the app as intended, with that rich spatial audio, is pretty vital for users to orient themselves and build those mental maps effectively.
So if you're not getting that immersive sound, you're missing a core part of the value, and yeah, you might be less likely to keep using it. Makes total sense. Okay, pulling all this together, what are the practical takeaways? What should designers and developers be thinking about?
Well, there are several key implications, I think. First, that strong link between the first week's use and long-term retention. That points to a real opportunity for maybe early intervention.
How so?
By analyzing how a new user engages right at the start, maybe developers could identify people who seem at risk of dropping off.
And then what? Nudge them.
Perhaps proactively offer some personalized support, or maybe highlight the features that seem most engaging, like those exploration tools. It could make a difference.
Like a smart tip popping up, hey, have you tried the Around Me feature or something?
Exactly like that. Second, the importance of features supporting exploration And that ambient awareness, the automatic callouts, the street preview, suggests these should be, high priority, both in development and how they introduce the app to new users.
Got it. Emphasize the discovery aspect, not just the routing.
Right. And as we just discussed, really underlining the value of the 3D spatial audio and encouraging users to use headphones or Bluetooth seems critical.
Make sure they get the full experience.
Definitely. And the tutorial finding, that suggests maybe rethinking how help is provided. Perhaps more contextual, in-the-moment guidance, or better integration with actual tasks.
Yeah, maybe less read this manual and more let me show you as you go.
Could be more effective.
Yeah.
And finally, just a reminder, while this study gives us great insights, the BLV community is diverse, people have different preferences. Some might still really value hearing ambient sounds from the environment for orientation. So flexibility in design is still key.
Good point. Okay, so quick recap then. That first week, absolutely critical, sets the stage. Actively using the spatial audio callouts, especially the ones that help you explore, is a really strong sign someone will stick with it.
Yeah.
Using headphones or Bluetooth to actually get that 3D sound is vital.
Crucial.
And, surprisingly, maybe don't put all your eggs in the tutorial basket. Real-world use seems to matter more.
That sums it up pretty well. These findings, they really go beyond just tracking clicks. They shed light on how BLV individuals are actually integrating this tech into their lives, what they find valuable for navigating and just understanding the world around them.
This has been, really illuminating. It makes you think, doesn't it, about how we interact with all kinds of tech. What are those seemingly small interactions that might actually be the key to keeping users engaged long term?
Yeah.
And this idea of supporting exploration and discovery, not just task completion. Could that be a kind of universal principle for designing engaging apps, even outside of accessibility?
That is a fantastic thought to leave people with. And, if you are interested in digging even deeper into this specific research, we absolutely recommend finding the original paper, Characterizing and Predicting Engagement of Blind and Low Vision People with an Audio-Based Navigation App.
We'll put a link somewhere, maybe.
Yeah, it gives you the full data, the methodology, and maybe consider your own experiences. When you try a new app or tech, how do you engage? Does your own behavior line up with some of these findings about exploration and early use? It's definitely fascinating stuff to